You perform success so well, even you forget it's a performance. You hit the milestones, say the right things, become who you're supposed to be, and for a while, it works. People notice, they applaud. You feel like you're becoming someone. But somewhere along the way, you stop asking, do I even want this? Does any of this feel like me? Success becomes muscle memory, an autopilot version of life. You're not lying, you're not pretending, you're just following the script. Until one day the silence catches up with you, and in that silence, a deeper question begins to surface. If I've done everything right, why do I still feel wrong? You weren't born chasing promotions, titles, or numbers. You didn't come into the world worrying about your personal brand or 5-year plan. But somewhere along the line, that story began to form. It's subtle at first, the gold star, the proud nod, the quiet approval that says, keep going, do well, be good, achieve something. And you do. You start learning what earns attention, what makes people proud, what gets rewarded. You pick it up like a second language, unspoken, but everywhere. By the time you hit your teens, the script is clear. Work hard, be productive, get ahead, make something of yourself. Success is no longer a possibility, it's a moral obligation. And so you do what you're supposed to do. You climb, you hustle, you perform. You start shaping your days around goals you didn't entirely choose, but deeply believe in, because everyone around you is doing the same. College becomes a brand. Work becomes an identity. Your schedule becomes a scoreboard. The busier you are, the more valuable you must be. Even rest gets folded into the performance. You meditate so you can focus better. You journal so you can optimize your mindset. You take walks not for peace, but for productivity hacks. What used to be human, effort, rest, joy, confusion, becomes strategic. Every emotion becomes data. Every moment becomes leverage. You're no longer just living. You're curating, managing, leveling up. And if it starts to feel hollow, you don't ask why. You double down. Maybe I need a new morning routine. Maybe I haven't optimized my potential yet. Maybe I'm the problem. Because questioning the script feels dangerous. If you stop striving, what's left? Who are you without the next thing to chase? That's the trap. Success stops being a path. It becomes a pattern, something you do not because it aligns with who you are, but because it's what you've always done. And so the role deepens, not from deceit, not from arrogance, but from adaptation. You become good at what the world rewards. But slowly, quietly, you start to forget what your own voice sounds like. You stop asking, what do I want? You start asking, what works? What looks good? What gets results? It's not that you don't care. You care deeply, but you've been trained to aim that care outward, toward approval, applause, confirmation. And in that outward gaze, the inner one dims. This is the deception. Success is no longer a discovery. It's a role rehearsed until it feels like reality. Not because it's true, but because it's familiar. And the longer you play it, the harder it is to imagine anything else. Because when a script is all you've ever known, improvising feels like a threat. At first, the script feels safe. It gives you direction, clarity, structure. You know what's expected. You know how to deliver. And when you succeed, there's a quiet rush. Not joy exactly, but relief. Like you've escaped something. Like you've proven, just for now, that you're okay. But the longer you live in that role, the harder it is to tell where it ends and you begin. You become fluent in expectations. You say what's impressive, feel what's acceptable, pursue what's rewarded. But something's missing, not on the surface. That's polished, deeper, subtler. Like a part of you got left behind while you were busy becoming someone. Carl Jung called this the persona, not a lie, not a mask, but a kind of necessary adaptation. The version of you built for the world. capable, composed, consistent, the image others can understand and admire. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. We all need a persona to connect, to function. But problems arise when we forget it's a version, not the whole. When we believe we are the performance. You see it in the fatigue that doesn't go away, in the success that doesn't satisfy, in the quiet moments when the performance drops and you feel nothing. That's the cost of living only as the persona. You begin to disappear behind the role. You stop speaking honestly, even to yourself. You stop asking what you feel. You ask what's expected. You stop noticing the tension, the little winces in your chest, because stopping means slowing down, and slowing down means hearing the truth. And the truth is, this isn't you. Not fully. It's a polished excerpt, a refined version, a highlight reel that runs so often, you start mistaking it for a soul. And if you keep going, if you keep performing a life that looks right but feels wrong, your inner world starts to fracture. You'll feel it in your energy, in your relationships, in your sleep. A kind of spiritual friction. The body knows when something is off, even if the ego pretends it's fine. Because the deeper self, what Jung called the true self, cannot be tricked. It doesn't care about metrics, it doesn't crave admiration, it wants alignment. And when you live too far from that center, when your life becomes a constant performance of competence, success, likability, something inside you starts to resist. That resistance might look like burnout, or a vague restlessness that nothing soothes, or a quiet sadness you can't explain. Because no matter how good the performance is, part of you knows, if you stopped playing the role, some of that applause might stop too. And that's the real fear, not just being unsuccessful, but being unseen. So you keep the script running, not because it fulfills you, but because it protects you. And slowly you begin to mistake safety for purpose, control for connection, success for self. But the soul doesn't settle for illusion. Eventually, it calls you back. And it doesn't shout, it aches. You don't notice it all at once. It starts as fatigue, a tension in your chest that no sleep or supplement can fix. You reach a goal, and instead of satisfaction, there's silence. Not peace, just absence. Another milestone, another title, another win, and yet it doesn't land. It doesn't move you. So you tell yourself it's just a phase. You set another target, you build the next thing, you keep going. But over time, the high wears off faster, the meaning fades quicker. The gap between what you're achieving and what you're feeling grows wider and lonelier. Jung understood this as the consequence of over-identifying with the persona. When you live only for your role in the outer world, the inner world begins to wither. You lose contact with the shadow, the part of you that holds all the truth you've learned to hide. And that shadow doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It festers. It speaks through fatigue, through disconnection, through the question you don't say out loud. Why doesn't any of this feel like enough? You've done everything they told you. You've become someone impressive, someone others admire, even envy. But it still feels like you're borrowing your own life. You smile, but it doesn't reach your body. You win, but it doesn't reach your heart. You show up, but you don't feel there. This is the quiet fallout of living from the outside in. Because when you chase success not from desire, but from fear, fear of being ordinary, fear of being left behind, fear of being exposed, it doesn't matter what you build. It won't feel like yours. You might have the job, the brand, the audience. But inside, you feel like a ghost. Present but disconnected. Visible but unseen. Achieving but not arriving. That's the paradox. The more you succeed without inner alignment, the more success becomes a kind of exile from your own instincts, your own hunger, your own self. The world cheers. You keep producing, but something essential inside you has gone silent. And when you finally slow down, not because you choose to, but because your body, your mind, your spirit forces you to, that silence becomes deafening. Because it's not just burnout, it's not just fatigue, it's grief. Grief for all the parts of you that got abandoned in the name of becoming somebody. Grief for the dreams that weren't marketable, for the values that got edited out, for the joy you postponed, hoping someday success would hand it back to you. But it never does, because success isn't meant to give you yourself back. That's not its job. That's yours. At first, it's just discomfort, a vague sense that something's off, that this life, the one you built, the one that looks so good on paper, doesn't quite fit anymore. You try to ignore it, reframe it, push through, but it keeps showing up in the quiet moments, in the in-between spaces, in the loneliness you feel, even when you're surrounded by people who admire you. And slowly, if you're willing to stop numbing, something else starts to surface. Not answers, not clarity, but a feeling. Raw, strange, unfamiliar. I've lost touch with who I am. Jung believed that this moment, this rupture, isn't a failure. It's an initiation, not the kind with ceremony or celebration, but the kind that strips away illusion. It's the moment the ego starts to loosen its grip. When the persona cracks, not because you've done something wrong, but because a deeper part of you wants to be seen. Not the version of you the world claps for, the one beneath all that, the part that's unpolished, uncertain, alive. This is what Jung called individuation, the slow, often painful process of reclaiming the parts of yourself that got exiled in order to fit in. The shadow isn't the villain, it's the truth you were taught to reject. It's the voice that asked, what if I don't want to be productive all the time? What if success doesn't matter to me the way they said it should? What if I'm not who I thought I was? And once you let those questions live, even without answers, something begins to shift. You stop performing, not all at once, not dramatically, but in small, honest moments. You tell the truth in a conversation you would have avoided. You say, I don't know, instead of pretending. You sit with discomfort instead of drowning it in dopamine and deadlines. It's not glamorous, it doesn't get applause, but it feels real. And for the first time in a long time, you feel real. This is how the return begins. Not by abandoning everything, but by asking gently, what if success isn't the goal? What if it's just the decoy? The self you're looking for, the one that feels like home, isn't waiting at the top of the mountain. It's waiting underneath the performance, underneath the striving, in the quiet place where you finally stop needing to be impressive and just dare to be honest. You were never asked what success meant to you. Not really. You were handed an image, a storyline, told to follow it, excel at it, prove yourself through it, and so you did. Not because you were shallow, because you were human, because belonging mattered, because security mattered, because being seen somewhere felt safer than being seen nowhere. But now, in the quiet space left by disillusionment, a new question emerges. What if success isn't about winning, but about returning? Returning to what feels honest, to what feels alive, to the version of you that isn't optimized for public approval, but built for inner resonance. Jung never spoke about success in capitalist terms. For him, success wasn't about accumulation, it was about integration, the bringing together of opposites, the merging of light and shadow, the courage to own the entire landscape of who you are, not just the peaks that photograph well. Real success, then, isn't something the world grants you. It's something you grant yourself the moment you stop asking for permission to be whole. It doesn't look like constant growth. It doesn't sound like certainty. It feels like alignment. like the absence of tension between what you say and what you believe, between how you live and who you are. It might not impress people, but it will move you, because success isn't peace after the climb. It's peace instead of the climb, or rather, peace in the climb. When you're no longer scaling someone else's mountain, maybe success looks like a smaller life than you imagined. Not because you failed, but because you stopped inflating your life to fill someone else's emptiness. Maybe it means walking away from things that once defined you, because you've outgrown them, because they never fit. Maybe it means slowing down, saying no, starting over, not because you're lost, but because you're finally willing to stop pretending you're not. The world won't recognize this kind of success. It won't reward it. But that's the point. It's yours, unpurchased, unbranded, unapplauded, but true. There's a kind of peace that doesn't come from achieving more, but from needing less. Not because you've given up, but because you've finally stopped bargaining for your worth. When you let go of the version of success that was never yours to begin with, something strange happens. The world gets quieter, and your life starts to sound like you. You stop filling the silence with productivity. You stop padding your days with progress updates. You stop asking strangers to reflect your value back to you. You breathe. Not for performance, not for presence, just because you can. Jung wrote that the goal of life is not perfection, but wholeness. Not to be spotless, but to be real. To hold the contradictions, to be flawed and worthy, in progress and enough. That's the paradox most people miss. The moment you let go of who you think you need to be, you start becoming who you actually are. No more overextending to protect an identity you secretly question. No more shrinking your needs to fit someone else's definition of growth. No more asking whether you've earned rest or joy or love. You begin to live differently, slower, softer, but also deeper. You start doing things not because they're impressive, but because they matter. You say no to things that once terrified you to miss out on. You create because it's meaningful, not marketable. And somewhere in that letting go, you discover a version of success that's quiet, grounded, and alive. A success that no longer needs to be broadcasted to be real. A self that no longer needs to be verified to feel whole. You may have fewer followers. You may own fewer things, but you'll be more present in your own life than you ever were before. And that's a trade worth making, because you can always build another platform and you can always earn another trophy. But you can't recover years spent living someone else's dream. You can't unlive the cost of a life that never felt like yours. And when you finally lay down the burden of becoming someone, you start becoming yourself. This isn't the ending they promised. There's no confetti, no dramatic applause, no spotlight waiting to name this moment significant, just stillness, a kind you hadn't felt in years. Because for the first time, you're not chasing, not fixing, not proving. You're simply here with yourself. And somehow, that feels like enough. Jung never said the journey back to the self would be easy. He said it would be necessary. Necessary to feel the grief. Necessary to face the shadow. Necessary to stop outsourcing your life to algorithms, mentors, metrics, and remember what it feels like to live from the inside out. Because the truth is, success was never supposed to be the point. The point was presence, integrity, alignment, living a life that felt like yours, even when no one was watching. You don't arrive there all at once. You arrive through rupture, through discomfort, through the brave and quiet decision to stop editing yourself to be palatable, to stop building ladders you don't even want to climb, to stop begging the world to name your worth when you could have named it yourself. That's what coming home feels like. Not ease, but honesty. Not applause, but recognition. The kind that happens in a mirror, not a feed. And maybe you'll still chase things. That's okay. Desire isn't the enemy, it's the compass. But now it points inward. It asks first, is this real for me? Does this nourish me? Am I doing this because it's true or because it's familiar? That's the work, not erasing the persona. But remembering it was never the whole story. And you don't need to start over to begin again. You just need to stop running from the place you were always meant to return to. So wait. Not to fall behind, but to remember who's been with you this whole time. The self you silenced, the voice you buried, the life you postponed. It's still here, and it's not asking for much, just for you, fully, honestly, unapologetically. That is the kind of success no one can give you, and no one can take away, because it was never out there. It was always yours.